Good morning, everybody. Can you guys hear me? Good morning, Akashians. How are we doing today?
One second.
Okay.
We're not live?
It says we're live. I just want to make sure we're live.
Yeah.
Great. Hey, Jim. How are you? Hi, Molly, Andrew. Welcome, everybody, for another live stream, Akashian live stream. Really excited to have you guys here. We have an amazing guest with us today. We have Brian Fox. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself to the audience?
Hi, I'm Brian Fox, and I'm a fitness expert. No, I'm not a fitness expert, but I am an open source advocate. I've been doing open source since before everybody on this channel was born, unfortunately for me. I started with Richard Stallman back in 1984 as the first employee of the Free Software Foundation. And from there, I wrote some software that people use, like that thing back there that says GNU Bash. And then from there, I wrote many other pieces of software that no one ever seems to care about. And most recently, I'm a co-founder at Orchid Labs and an advisor and friend to Akash.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Brian. And our CEO, Greg, why don't you introduce yourself to people who need the introduction?
Hi, my name is Greg Osuri. I'm the CEO founder of Akash Network. I'm an applied economist and computer scientist. I happen to use, a few things Brian wrote for a little over 15 to 16 years, probably more than that. And I'm really excited to have Brian really help us navigate through the intricacies of open source, and really amazing to have someone of this stature be involved with Akash. Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. So today, this is the start of a new series. Previously, we were doing the Akashian Challenge live streams. Now we're going to start a new live stream series that we'll be doing, hopefully, I want to say bi-weekly. This live stream series, we're going to be discussing open source, why Brian decided to work with us, and the future of the internet. We'll be doing a Q&A, as always, at the end of the stream, so please feel free to ask all your burning questions in the chat box. We're going to try to answer as many of them as possible at the end of this portion. We're also announcing the winners from our last live stream at the end of this one. Now that we're moved on to YouTube, our giveaways are going to be a little bit different. So in order to enter, you're going to have to subscribe to the channel and participate in the chat box. We've got some fun prizes for you guys. We've got some t-shirts, some Akash merch, and a Ledger Nano X. So some of you guys will be winning from the last Akashian live stream, and those of you that do subscribe and do participate in the chat box will enter in an opportunity to win next time at our next live stream. So with that being said, why don't we get right to it? So this question is for both of you guys, Greg and Brian. What makes you guys so passionate about open source?
Greg?
Well, I was born and raised on a farm in India. I know most people know that. For me, purchasing software was not exactly an option. There were two options: pirate it or open source it. I mean, we did our fair share of piracy, but I think the biggest learning came through open source, right? So my introduction to professional software was open source, and me and like millions, if not billions of us out there, for us, open source is the only option. And second, as I got more into my professional and started more development, the beauty of open source is collective intelligence, right? And that is not monetarily incentivized or driven. These are a bunch of people that love software and love to work and build together, right? You don't know who these people are. They don't really make money on it. It's just the pure love of building, the builders, right? Which is, I believe, the foundation of our society. So I think open source is where you get the purest form of builders, building for the love of building, and actually making an impact that is immeasurable. That's why I love open source.
Open source for me is when people talk about it. Generally, by the way, I use the term free software, but I'm aware that everybody says open source today. When people talk about it, they talk about it like it's this new movement. And for me, it feels like this is the way things used to be before proprietary software showed up and ruined everything. So in the late 70s and early 80s, that's kind of everybody who worked in interesting software, like in universities and so forth. They all shared ideas, and source code was the best way to kind of share the ideas and show people what you were thinking and what you were thinking semantically, like what your plan was, what your architectural plan was. And then companies like Microsoft and again Apple started delivering what I would straight up proprietary software where you couldn't see the source code at all, and yet that was adding some value into the ecosystem of people using computers. And I think everybody at the time thought, well, this isn't quite right. You're not sharing your ideas. We can't advance the science as a whole. It doesn't happen this way in mathematics. It doesn't happen this way in physics. It doesn't really happen this way in chemistry unless you're a big pharma. In general, things that we learn as people get passed on to other people so that everybody can grow on the work that's been done before. So free software, free as in ideas, not as in beer. Free software is a fantastic way for creative, intelligent individuals to share ideas with each other and to grow those ideas from the germ that they had to the complete finished product that people end up seeing. So I'm very passionate about that.
That's great.
Awesome.
Thank you guys so much for those responses. On to the next question. Greg, what inspired you to build Akash? And for Brian, why do you feel inspired to support Akash's vision?
So, it really comes down to, like Brian was saying, closed versus proprietary, closed versus open, right? Today, if you consider computing to be the fabric of human society, and everything runs, for better or worse, on the cloud today, right? And that cloud is increasingly becoming more closed, with 81% or so market share controlled by 4 companies, closed and oligopolized, right, on the worst side of things, right? Like similar to what we're seeing with what happened to open source software in the early days of Microsoft and eventually Apple and whatnot, right? So the foundational fabric of our society is increasingly being at risk of decoupling with the goals of a progress for society. And the effects are kind of visible too. Like you see increasingly Amazon, big guys stifling open source software, making them prohibitive to have any sense of business, any sense of monetization, or we are seeing cost increasing, right? Today to run an AI company on the cloud, it's literally paying 20% of your margins to Amazon. So we are seeing the effects of a closed oligopolized system, and really, and that's happening. While that's happening, on the other hand, you have this enormous amounts of capacity. We all know, anybody had operated a website or whatnot, your utilization rates are significantly low in a data center, right? Even north of 85% or so. In our conservative estimates, you have underutilized capacity. So, and fortunately, open source technologies such as Docker and such as Kubernetes, which cloud, by the way, uses and embraces to deliver their own, services, are increasingly becoming more mainstream, and they're getting more acceptable. And today we have north of 80% of the cloud that uses Kubernetes, right? So we have the same stack that closed source companies have. So why not make that available to the whole world? So the mission of Akash is to develop a modern high performance, sovereign open cloud, and where the system is not controlling the society, where but the other way, the society is controlling the system, essentially, right? So it's the first attempt of creating an open source cloud. And fortunately, being in crypto, we have the amazing way to sustain ourselves, and the token really adds an incredible sustainability mechanism. I hope the bigger open source world will take a look at how, instead of putting their preconceived biases next and about crypto and whatnot, and just really think about how we can create a sustainable ecosystem. And that's really the beginnings of Akash Network.
Great, thanks, Greg. And we can move on to Brian. What made you support Akash's vision?
Well, did you hear Greg speak? I mean, no. The core thing for me is, I believe the internet should be. Let me start from here. I think all reasonable advances in technology simply are there to enhance communication between human beings. So from telegraph to telephone to the internet, I think these are just better and better ways for us to communicate. We're having this large meeting with many people on video. It's as if we're in the same room. This is just another enhancement of communication. So Orchid was one method of increasing the access of the internet to people that didn't have access before, or to people who felt that their privacy was being distorted. And I can talk about that a little bit later. I think Akash has a different approach to a slightly different problem, but it's the same thing, which is let's make the internet available to anyone who actually wants it. So as Greg has pointed out, maybe somebody wants to be able to stand up a website, and they have to go through various centralized services to do that. Well, it would be great if they could actually just do things the way the web originally started out. Originally, you didn't go through a centralized service. You just stood up a website on your computer at home, and then people could come look at it. But when everything got centralized, that kind of went away, and the large ISPs started to make it difficult. I mean, I remember very well when somebody couldn't get to the web server on the machine at my house because Cox Cable had decided port 80 should be shut down for incoming traffic. And we were pissed. We couldn't run our own email servers anymore. There was a large number of us, internet users who just wanted to use this common carrier network. So Akash fit my model of the way the world is supposed to work. And then they're exceptional human beings, and they're doing a great job of actually executing. So why wouldn't I want to be part of something so excellent? So thanks again, Greg.
That's a great answer.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you very much. Brian, you've got a prolific roster of work ranging from creating GNU Bash to an open source election system to co-founding Orchid Labs. I mean, this kind of touches on the previous question, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more. How do you feel your work right now specifically and your vision intersects with what we're doing at Akash?
I think it's kind of similar to the same answer I gave before. I care about the kind of internet ecosystem as a whole. And so anywhere I can contribute in a reasonable way, in an effective way, that's what I like to do. So at Orchid, I was the original technical co-founder, drew the picture of a network on a board, had these conversations, and now the team is building out a fantastic network, which is live and utilized. I'm hoping that my role at Akash will help Akash to utilize open source and to further open source ideas and ideals throughout the ecosystem. Aside from the actual product that's being delivered, I think that there are a lot of core valuable ideas that can, again, help raise the technology in the world at large. You mentioned, for example, that I had worked on open source voting. I'm still very active in that. I started in 2007, and I still am trying to get something to really happen. We've got a couple of states now using two different open source systems. We have people I'm working with are testifying in Congress. I don't know whether the Super Mini will be part of what's going to happen in democracy moving forward, but I kind of have an idea that it probably will. I mean, there's nothing more democratic than every individual being part of a decision-making process in a network. So
That's great.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brian. Greg, why decentralized cloud, and what makes that possible?
Well, I think I answered the question before, like it's to democratize cloud access, really. Why decent? What makes it possible? Two things, right? I mean, first is open source software. I mean, it's a lot more acceptable and it's a lot more prolific now and widely used. This is the software that a lot of us have worked on in early days, Kubernetes and Docker and whatnot. And my software that Brian essentially wrote, GNU Bash, which is the piece that ties everything together in the cloud world, right? And second is just the availability of compute. There's massive amounts of compute that's available, and much more than what the cloud currently actually makes it possible. And another thing is diversification of this compute, right? And I think with Super Mini, we're seeing that there's a possibility that a low-powered home-based device can actually contribute to a larger cloud and give you a very similar experience. And we're seeing with devices such as Helium, I don't know if you folks are aware, but Helium is a long-range WAN, a long-range Wi-Fi network that actually incentivizes someone to host a node in tokens. So we're seeing this democratization and distribution of these low-powered but very effective computational nodes all over the world, and more acceptance, I believe, and of course from a technology standpoint, on the decentralization arena, you've seen much more evolved consensus models that are much simpler and a lot more secure. So yeah, the financial and the technological and now the political world, they're all converging. And increasingly, it's more being evident that decentralization is the way to go, especially like what happened in the recent past with the censorship resistance or censorship for Wall Street bets and other services. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much. And this question is for both of you guys. What do you think you'd be most excited to see deployed on the Akash network?
I'll let Brian go first.
Say again, which projects?
What do you think you'd be most excited to see deployed onto the Akash network?
I don't think so. Let me say what I don't think is going to be the most exciting. I don't think that that anything directly having to do with crypto is in fact the most exciting thing that will ever appear in Akash. So I don't think that mining or doing cryptographic puzzles or anything, I don't think that is the most exciting thing. I think the most exciting thing is going to be, and I'm going to kind of address one of the questions I saw here. Somebody said, don't you think a decentralized ecosystem will be a bit messy and anarchy? And I think, yes, I hope so. I mean, this is the goal of higher communication. I don't want to stop anybody from saying what it is they want to say, as long as they're not creating violence in some way. And I want to make sure that everybody has the right to not listen to them. So it's perfectly okay if you want to listen to something, and it's perfectly okay if you don't want to listen to something. And sure, anarchy is kind of, people say, oh, that's crazy, but I actually think that the structure is created by the people who utilize the system. So this, for me, is another form of democracy. I don't know what the most exciting thing to come out of Akash's network will be, but I know it will be exciting because there'll be a large number of people doing it.
Well, do we consider Doge going up 800% anarchical in some form?
It's worth that much.
Yes, absolutely. That's the how do you value liberty, right?
Whatever people are willing to pay, I guess.
Or some market cap for liberty. But I mean, I think to Brian's question, right? Wall Street bets. I love to see Wall Street bets. My most satisfying moment will be like when something gets shut down on Discord.
Yeah.
Someone should boot up a Matrix server, write chat on Akash. Something gets shut down on Reddit. Someone should boot up a discourse forum on Akash, right? Like a website gets taken down, someone should go start a blog on Akash, right? And I think that is the foundational. That liberty is foundational for a free society, right? So I like to see that happen. That'll be the most exciting things for me.
Great answer.
Because it's not possible anyway. Yeah.
So Greg, basically, you're saying like removal of censorship.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great answer, guys. Brian, this one's for you. You have a long lineage of being involved in the finance world. Not only did you build the first interactive online banking software in the US for Wells Fargo in 1995, but fun fact for the viewers, your grandfather is also the artist behind the Monopoly Man. Along with Akash, we're sort of part of this evolving movement in finance. I just wanted to see, how do you think that these innovations are changing society?
So there's a couple things in there. One of the things that I've seen is that the average human being who uses technology to communicate with other human beings is willing to give up privacy for convenience. I think that those people don't have a very strong understanding of what it is they're giving up. It's very common to hear someone say, well, I have nothing to hide, so what do I care if my cable company knows my name, my address, my social security number, has my credit card number, and knows every single website I visit? Well, what do I care? What could possibly go wrong with somebody having all that information? I see decentralized networks and decentralized networks as being one very straightforward way to combat this exchange of privacy and personal data for convenience. We can actually deliver convenience without making that exchange. We can allow people to make decisions about sharing their data in a way that they want it to be shared and not in a way that somebody else wants to share it. We can prevent massive attacks. We can prevent massive distributions of data by not collecting it all in a single location so that it's available to be hacked by a nefarious person. And I think that these are the most important things that we can get out of a decentralized network. I think that this also includes financial information and financial transactions. The nation states don't like the idea of individuals doing financial transactions because they can't tax them. That's the only reason. There's no other reason. There's no other reason we use the dollar in the United States except that that's the way that we pay taxes. There's no other reason for the dollar. It's not, backed by something or, that's not how it works.
Or it can be inflated out. So,
yeah,
add to our debt, right? Like,
in the future, we will all use Doge. No.
I mean, at least on Mars, it looks like, at this point.
Okay.
Very good point.
That's where I'm coming from on that. I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record because that's really been my focus, and that's what I keep pushing on.
No, that's great. Well, we really appreciate the response, Brian. And this is kind of our last question, and the answer will probably touch on a bit of the responses from the previous question. And this is
before we go to the next question. I think it's a very important topic that you brought up about privacy. Like most people take privacy and trade convenience for privacy, and the biggest thing that I really hate is like when people say, "Hey, privacy is not for me because I'm not a bad person."
Yeah. Right.
It is such a ignorant position to have, and I think that when people say that, this quote from Rosa Luxemburg, who's a philosopher, a French philosopher, she said, "People that don't move do not notice their chains." Right? Like, I mean, really think about that, right? I mean, it's people that privacy is so fundamental, and I think the whole model of people, the state making you think that you should not embrace privacy if you're not doing a bad thing is basically like installing a panopticon. The idea behind panopticon is like when you know you're being watched, you're more likely to behave orderly and in the way people want you to be watched. Panopticon is the structure they put in the prisons. So it doesn't really matter if there's a guard there or not. Just the fact that there's this high building where there's a possibility that God can watch you, right? So that's the thing about surveillance. Like when you're being surveilled, people doesn't need to be watching you all the time. Just the fact that you know you're being watched makes you behave in the way they want you to behave. And that's really why privacy is super important, because that is foundation. It's fundamental to freedom.
Thanks for that, Greg. Oh, go ahead, Brian, please.
No, Greg, I agree 100%, and I do think it's interesting. It's difficult if you start talking about political regimes or nation states or any of that stuff. Then the as you pointed out, the ignorant statement, "I don't care about privacy." Those people kind of don't care. They're like, "Yeah, but I'm not involved. I'm okay with everything the U.S. got. I don't care if the NSA listens to me, right?" But if you just bring it home to them a little bit and ask them, when you're at home with your significant other and you're having an intimate conversation, is that the same way you speak when you're standing in the bus with everybody else? It's not, right? Because the way you communicate is different depending on who you're communicating with, and what you communicate is different depending on who you're communicating with. That is the essence of privacy. You get to choose what you want to express and who you want to express it to. And if you want to give that up, then just think about that as individuals.
I experienced in China. If you go to China, if you talk about Chairman Mao on a taxi, you'll get shunned out. Like we were riding with a Chinese person, and some casual conversation came with Mao, and they're so scared. You can see the fear, like you smell the fear in people. And that's extreme case of like state controlled, extreme control of state. But that's imagine a similar scenario that you're in, right? So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. And this question will kind of build on some of the previous questions, but and this is our last question before we start taking some from the audience. In an ideal world, what does the future of the internet look like to you?
Open, permissionless, sovereign, and non-custodial.
Global communication between individuals and groups, and if we can just get rid of surveillance and censorship, life is a good place to be.
Sweet. Thank you guys so much for that. So now we're going to take some questions from the audience. We have some from Twitter that we will that we're going to start working through. Let's see what we got here. Some people feel insecure about using VPNs because they feel they can compromise their security or be exposed to malware. What do you think about that? Do you consider that the users Orchid VPN are people that use Orchid VPN are exposed to any risk?
Do I consider that the users of Orchid's VPN are exposed to any risk?
Yes.
Orchid VPN is, of course, a piece of software that is distributed, and we've done everything we can at this stage to essentially move that exposure, remove the risk exposure to zero. Do I believe it's at zero this instant? No. And it would be ingenuous of me to say so. It is a distributed network, so it's open to various types of nation-state attacks that can happen until we're strong enough, until we have enough people involved in a network to make that not be a real thing. There are technical hurdles which we're still, which the community as a whole, blockchain community as a whole, is working on, and I think that those things are. It is possible that there are quote unquote attack vectors in there. Do I think it's better than what we have? Oh yes, by several orders of magnitude. I mean, I think the amount of effort that needs to go in to even mount an attack is really non-trivial. It takes nation state type abilities to get in there and do stuff. So Oops, I hope that answers that.
Great. No, that's great. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate the response. Let's find another one here. This one's for you, Greg. Being a decentralized cloud computing service, how does the user experience on Akash differ for both providers and tenants, from a traditional centralized cloud computing service?
Oh, it's just way better. You should right now go and deploy a piece of software from our Akash, awesome Akash repo on Akash first, and then do the same thing on Amazon. Tell me which is better. I'll tell you what, the experience that you're experiencing today on Amazon, if you want to deploy anything, is you go sign up for an account, you go verification, then you email verification, and then you put in your credit card, yada, 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 and then you essentially go through this documentation on how do you do something called Cloud Foundation, I believe. Yeah, it's been so long since I use Amazon. And this gnarly JSON file that you parse through, and by the time you get anything functionally working, it's going to take you at least a couple of days. On Akash, you get the SDL file in 2 commands you can deploy, and there's no sign-up, there's no verification, there's no emails, none of that nonsense, right? I think the experience, like very similar experience that you see today, Uniswap versus a centralized exchange. You want to swap 2 tokens. Going to a centralized exchange, you log in, you solve the CAPTCHA, then you go, do the swap, then you do another withdrawal request, then you solve another, put in your 2FA and your email, and by the time you're done, it's going to take you a long damn time. Versus Uniswap, you just go and 2 clicks, you're done, right? So that's the experience, and I think decentralized software will be far better, far superior in experience to centralized software, just because the overhead they need is so minimal. And we're just starting to scratch the surface, and we're still so early. We still have to solve, not honestly, we still have the on-ramp problem. How do you get into the decentralized world? But once you're in the decentralized world, once you have these tokens, some form of token like Ethereum or whatnot, you can swap these tokens, you can do all that in such a beautiful, such a non-custodial. By the way, you don't give your email or you don't compromise your data, right? So now you don't have that thinking, right? Every time I give my email or give my name anywhere, I'm just like scared, it's just scary. That service you're giving or you're trusting, what are the chances they get hacked or they get exposed? Recently Drizzly was exposed, hacked, and thank God everybody knows how much I drink now.
Right.
Right. It's just like things are scary, right? So decentralization gives you that comfort and ease of use that centralized services cannot give.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg, for that response. This one's for you, Brian. This is from Crypto Boy 237. The main problem with most VPNs is internet speed. VPN slows down internet speed. So how does Orchid VPN solve the speed problem?
Orchid's built on quantum mechanics. No, Orchid is an overlay network, which means it sits on top of a physical infrastructure, which is provided by, like in this country, it's just provided by all the cable operators and BBN Planet and so forth, right? So the speed limit is the speed limit of the physical infrastructure that you're running on. Is the overhead that's created by having this overlay network unusable? Does it make the experience a noticeably poor experience? I'm happy to say that the networking code is spectacular, and that you don't experience. You might experience a slowdown by using different infrastructure, which is slower. But in general, the way things are designed, you don't experience a slowdown. You get really fast, really good throughput. And just try it. Just download the app and check it out. And then
I used it. I love it.
Answer that question for yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. Just use it. Just use the software.
Thank you so much, Brian. We have a couple of questions here. People asking, in various different ways, like how would Orchid protocol, for instance, interact with Akash network? People have been asking in so many words, a couple different ways. So maybe you guys can unpack that and talk about that a little bit.
Well, I'll jump in here a little bit. One of the goals, again, stated goals of Orchid Network is lack of surveillance and the ability for people behind restrictive firewalls to get access to the internet at large. If someone was attempting to block connections to the Akash network from behind a restrictive firewall, Orchid would be an excellent tool to get around that, would be an excellent infrastructure to allow somebody from behind a restrictive firewall to get directly into the Akash network. So that is one kind of very straightforward way in which I see Orchid and Akash working together, synergistically.
And another way is Akash could run Orchid nodes, like both on the data center as well as Super Mini when that's available. So there is like, Brian brought up a very, very important point where you see essentially VPN as a last mile problem, right? It doesn't matter how decentralized you are, till you hit the DNS or still you hit the IP address, you still have to solve the last mile problem. That's where Orchid comes into play really well. I mean, gives you the ability to hit the IP address. And I think overall, on a bigger picture, you have tools like Handshake, right? And Handshake is the decentralized DNS system. The way it works is by replacing the root zone. VPNs have the ability to push DNS changes to the end user. So I could see a world where you could actually, the VPN becomes a gateway to the decentralized world, both from a DNS as well as routability, right? Like there are lots of ways. I think you're going to see a convergence of a lot of these decentralized technologies, all delivering to the goals of a better society. And Akash provides the infrastructure. Orchid provides the routability. Something like Handshake provides the discovery. And something like Filecoin or RV or any of these provide long-term storage. And then, all the pieces, and something like IBC or Cosmos inter-blockchain communication ensures there's a frictionless experience for interoperating between these blockchains, right? Because all of them charge some form of dollars or some form of tokens, right? So I think a beautiful thing is all these products are live, and now it's about bringing and giving a very seamless experience.
Great.
And just like the internet, right? Internet works with protocols for interacting with each other in a seamless way. Like Bash, the beautiful thing about Bash is the simple text streams, right? Like it's a beautiful text-based stream protocol, right? Using Bash, you can chain a bunch of commands and you can interoperate between amazing set of commands in a very simple.
We have better protocols. We have better protocols than Bash.
I don't know. I love Bash text streams. I mean, I wrote an entire CI server in Bash. So yeah. Oh, by the way, one more question for you. Way more Emacs.
well, so three things. You may not know I was the maintainer of Emacs for 2 years.
I do know.
So there's that, okay. But the other thing is that the people who ask that question clearly don't understand what Emacs is. They think it's a text editor, and it's not a text editor. It's an IDE, right? It's a programmable IDE. So yeah, they're apples and oranges.
Yes.
If you want to edit the file for about 3 seconds, then it doesn't really matter what you use. Nano.
No, but there are those of us that use Vim as a full-blown text, full-blown IDE.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Can't be safe, huh?
I can help you increase your efficiency and further the quality of open source by helping you to use Emacs.
Yes, absolutely. Now, although I'm now switching to, I'm actually dabbling around GUI-based editors. I suppose you have the Microsoft Visual Studio, which ironically is open source right now.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Yeah, Emacs is incredible.
I believe there's a lot of more reasonable IDEs now than there were in the early to mid 80s. And I think that, anything that makes you, anything that allows you to work efficiently is the right thing for you to use.
100%.
And really, I believe there should be no religion around it, around a piece of software. But apparently there really is a lot of religion around software.
Oh, editor maximalism is a real thing.
Yeah. My answer is just use VI mode in Emacs.
Yeah, I mean, I love Emacs. Actually, I use Emacs quite a few times. It's just I grew up with Vim like the last 15 years or so. Because when you're like a server person, when you go and like dabble on a server, you're so used to like using Vim, and that kind of like teaches you this like script editing like mode to like actually everything is a script now. And now I mostly program in Go, which is basically a scripting language. But yeah, Emacs is a significantly powerful IDE than Vim can ever get.
I have some pretty strong feelings about Emacs because when I first started using it, I was using Emacs on a 10x system, which was it's basically a P11 mainframe, and so the software was just written in a bunch of weird editor macros, but the way in which the software behaved showed a consistency of architectural thought that made me see that I saw beauty. I saw beauty in the creation, in the architectural design behind it. And so I got very excited. And so I immediately wrote a version of Emacs for the Apple II called Emacs. And it had MEDEX completion and dynamically loadable libraries and everything. And it ran in this like 48K space. That's right, K.
Wow.
48K space.
Wow.
But it was because of the architectural design, the beauty, the consistency that I saw in Emacs that I got really excited about software. Prior to that, it was just fun. I was just doing fun. But then I was like, wow, I can do things with this. I see now how I can semantically change the way people think about something or deliver a process semantically. It was very interesting.
That's how I felt about Bash. Like I reached a point in my life I was just so annoyed by everything. Scripting language like Ruby and like Python and like it was just like because when you write a program, you come back to it like a year ago, it wouldn't work because the dependence change and all this crap, right?
Right.
And right now I can go back to my 10-year-old programs that I wrote in Bash and they still work. Right. And that says something about longevity of software when you write something. Right. And I think, and I mean, we write a lot of Bash even till today. We wrote an entire treasury management system in Bash right now. That's internal. Right. And it's just so simple and it's so like clean in terms of the communication. I mean, talk about architecture beauty. I think got to talk about Bash a lot and just love it. Thank you, Brian.
Well, all right. Thank you. I really appreciate hearing that. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. That was awesome. We have another question for you, Greg. What is the priority of supporting machine learning on Akash?
It is amazing. I mean, thank you for the question. I mean, that's been back of my mind. It is a P1, a priority one for us. One of the amazing deployment styles that I've seen that we have quite a bit of interest from the community is, as you know, machine learning is extremely expensive to run on the cloud. So a lot of my friends with machine learning companies, they actually bring it in-house. They have a rack sitting in their offices with a beautiful like 2080s, configured, and they tend to use that maybe 2 or 3 hours a day. And when they want to use it, they normally actually sometimes have peaks, right? They actually need more capacity than they have. That's when they try to go to the cloud. And even that is very expensive. So the pattern is these guys use it like 2 hours and 22 hours is just sitting unused. So when that's being unused, they can rent out this capacity to the market and earn tokens in exchange. And when they want to use it more than they have, they can use these tokens to get more capacity. I think having a peer-to-peer machine learning cloud is an amazing use case for Akash. I'm really excited about that, actually. Much more than hosting websites. I mean, websites and all that is great, but this is really a serious problem. Like if Anderson Horowitz wrote a report that talked about the cost problem in machine learning, and I think 20% or so of the margins actually go to the cloud, so much so that this is actually hurting their valuations. For a decent, if you're a SaaS business, I think you got to have like 60% growth, 60% margin. That's like how you get like money, and these guys are not able to hit anything close to that. So it's actually hurting their valuations and hurting their models. And a peer-to-peer cloud solves a lot of these problems. So it's a P1 for us. And as soon as we're done with launching a Mainnet 2, which doesn't have GPU capacity, but as soon as we're done with that, we're going to publish a roadmap and to demonstrate where we're going to develop the machine GPU capacity, which is critical for machine learning.
Thanks, Greg. How are we doing on time, Brian? I know that we said 30 minutes, but I don't know how we're doing on time.
I'm okay. I'm okay to the top of the hour, and then I'm done.
Great. Perfect. So we have one more question for you from the chat. Nano payments are methods employed by Orchid to scale payments through easily. Can you explain more about nano payments?
I can. I'm not really the right guy to do that. Gustav Simonson was the guy who proposed this entire scheme. But the idea is that, let's say you have to do many transactions in a short period of time. So think about the fact that you're delivering a network access, and you do it in very small chunks. Maybe you do it in 50K chunks or something, some ridiculously small number, and the person who's receiving this access is paying for it, and the people who are supplying the access need to get paid. And you can't just supply access for half an hour and then hope that you get paid, because somebody, the nature of the world is somebody will take advantage of that, and you'll just be supplying access for free. But you also can't charge, you can't run a crypto payment for every single bit that's transferred, because that's another network problem that you would have to deal with. So it was really very simple. The idea was, why not make the key word that's left out of this statement here is probabilistic. The key thing for nano payments is they're probabilistic. And the idea is that I'll be supplying some services over a period of time, and over a period of time, I should earn this much money approximately for supplying those services. So every time I supply a service, give me a lottery ticket with the odds of me winning about equivalent to the amount of money I should make over a certain period of time. And only one of those gets cashed in. So you might end up having 100,000 transactions take place, and one of those 100,000 transactions gets a lottery ticket that's good for the next 800,000 transactions. So instead of having to have 100,000 transactions actually take place, one person just gets paid for essentially those transactions, and you just keep rotating that around. And then there's a bunch of stuff in there to prove that the lottery tickets are actually being paid out, like, so that you don't think you're just getting ripped off and somebody else is always getting the same ticket and so forth. So there's a bunch of stuff in there for that. But that's the idea, is don't do a whole bunch of transactions, but do on-chain transactions, so that you're not subject to having something bad happen off-chain, and you're not subject to getting ripped off by a bad guy.
Interesting. We have a similar problem for us as well, because we do stream payments, and we're supposed to settle it every second, right? And we do charge by the block period. But our solution was not as probabilistic and interesting as yours. I mean, we had a simple escrow-based model, I suppose. Like, you actually escrow the thing somehow. But this looks very fascinating. Maybe we should take a closer look at it.
Well, not surprisingly, it's 100% open source, and it's been broken out away from Orchid, so it's not just the Orchid thing. It's its own standalone thing that you should be able to use. I'll get you some links to that.
Awesome. Excited. Well, this is open source.
Thanks for the question. That was a great question, and thanks for the answer, guys. Greg, this is for you. How does Akash work? How will Akash work with different types of tokens? I think he's asking, like, how how are people going to settle on the network using different various types of tokens?
Right. So the ideal goal for us is to be token agnostic for settlement, right? So Akash token has different properties. One of the properties happen to be settlement, but there are other properties like staking, whatnot. For settlement, we want to encourage folks to pay using any tokens because our vision is to have a interoperable cloud where you can connect to Filecoin if you want to store data, or Handshake if you want to use DNS, or Orchid if you want to use routing, right? So you should be able to pay using Orchid tokens, right? I mean, like today, we don't have 100 credit cards for each service. We have one credit card we pay using. It doesn't matter what credit card you get from what bank, you still have just one standard, right? And I think extending that level of frictionless payments is important. And we shouldn't force on somebody to get a certain token because availability of tokens are just it's horrible, right? Like regulatory concerns and whatnot. And Ethereum being the most widely used token, why not pay using Ethereum? So we're looking at a multi-token settlement mechanism, and I've described this more in the white paper as how this could potentially work. One way to do is we still go through Akash as a medium exchange because the system is built around Akash tokens. Akash token is integral to the settlement, but there will be conversions to Akash token in a frictionless way that's invisible to the user using liquidity pools and whatnot. So this is where we touch a little bit on like, okay, can we leverage some of the decentralized liquidity pools available there to do the conversions? And IBC will be a critical component to this multi-token settlement mechanism. And that's one of the reasons we are so excited about IBC, because that adds a layer of frictionless interoperability. So we can actually connect to this liquidity pool. So Thorchain is one of the amazing liquidity pools we're looking at. And Thorchain is going to go live with IBC next month, I believe. They have upgraded to 040. It'll be second network to connect to the Cosmos Hub after Akash. So them being IBC ready is something we can really look at integrating into Akash. We have other ecosystems such as CRM, which is interesting to look at for liquidity chains, right? We go wherever there's liquidity for the token we'll support.
Great, thank you, Greg, and Brian. Thank you so much for joining us. It's been such a pleasure having you here for our audience, and I know they feel the same. We're going to move on to company updates, but before we do that, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to share any last words that you have for our audience. So yeah.
Okay, I do have some last words. They sound very trite, but they're not. Follow your bliss. No matter what you're doing, try to make sure it's the process that you love. All the other stuff shows up. Don't worry about buying some Doge and getting some GME. That's not the way the world works. What you care about is furthering something that you actually need and scratch your own itch. So what Greg and the team at Akash is doing is exactly the right thing. They are solving a problem that needed to be solved, and the rewards will come from that. That's it.
Thank you, Brian.
So much, Brian. That's awesome.
Yeah, really appreciate it.
Thanks for joining us, Brian.
Bye-bye.
That was great. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Brian's a legend. That was awesome.
Yes, I love Brian.
That was a great conversation, Greg. And now we're just going to move on to some quick company updates. So I'll go ahead and get it started. AKT reached new all-time highs in price and bonding ratio, which is really exciting. And we added 2 new exchanges to increase liquidity to AKT. We had BitHub Global and DigiFinex, and we are working to increase liquidity, actively working to increase liquidity as well. And Greg, maybe you can talk on with respect to some of the things that are happening on the technical side.
Yeah, I think increasing liquidity and making progress is the theme of 2021, and January is a great start for us. We made quite a bit of progress in the product side, really getting it to Mainnet 2. I think first thing you'll notice that's a little different from what you used to in the testnet is a deployment tool. We understand deployment was a little not as easy as it should be. So we had to conduct transactions, you got to push the manifest file, and you had to do a few things. Now it's all into a single command, a deploy command. Instead of creating multiple transactions, you can just say Akash deploy, and that should handle all the legwork for you. And it's going to get a lot better. This is just the first step in a series of improvements we're going to do for developer experience. And next thing we're looking forward to really is to take this deployment experience to the web and make it even more simpler, where you don't have to install the command line, but just click, select your SDL file, pay using Kepler Wallet, and you're good to go. So I'm really excited for a non-custodial web-based deployment tool, which the current deploy tool is a precursor. Of course, the big things we need to talk about that we made a humongous amount of progress is upgrading to Cosmos 040, which is IBC ready, right? So we will be the first chain to connect to the Cosmos Hub. As soon as Cosmos Hub goes alive, right around mid-Feb, we'll put a proposal out there. Looks like we're binary ready from a code standpoint. There's nothing that should come between us and the mainnet 2 right now. And all the work we're doing is to make sure that we test well, because this is a humongous upgrade, and all the migrations are working. Are we hitting the performance envelopes and the parameters that we envision, all that stuff. So very excited about it. Cosmos 040 and now 041 that came out to fix a few bugs. That should be an easy upgrade for us as well. And a few better error management. So one thing we noticed was like, well, if you use the same host name, by mistake or by ignorance, you were seeing an unexpected behavior happen on the network. So we fixed that hostname validation problem. Now it actually throws you a cool error, so you need to go change the host name. And we implemented MTLS authentication. So one thing you would have noticed is like when you're pushing your manifest file, you can push your manifest file and you can actually view anybody's logs as long as you have the deployment ID, right? So that was not cool because it's not okay to look at private logs of somebody. So now we fixed that. Now you need to be authenticated using MTLS. That uses your key. So it's pretty frictionless experience as well. So you have a lot more privacy now when it comes to application deployments and whatnot. And a big change we did from a provider standpoint is better inventory management. One of the issues that we were having before was the tool was Akash was oversubscribing resources because I believe there was a discrepancy in how it reports the availability of resources to what actually are there. And we fixed that problem. Now we have much smoother and more honest inventory reporting on Akash. And these three are all these together just improving the readiness to mainnet 2. And it's actually pretty smooth. We feel very confident. We feel very comfortable. We don't feel we're in a rush all that like we felt like before when we were shipping all these updates. We are in a much more relaxed state to push a mainnet 2, which is very critical for us for a big migration like a mainnet 2.
Great, thanks, Greg. And just to close this up, maybe you can just talk a little bit about what some of the things that we're working on in 21. I know we have mainnet 2 on the horizon, but just maybe some of the other things we can talk about.
Yes, absolutely. I think the big theme for 2021 is adoption. Like, how can we increase adoption? Now we know we had incredible success in testnet with validating some of our assumptions. Like, is this the right interface to deploy the tool? And people loved it. And a lot of folks right now in the chat that use the tool really love the interface, love the simplicity. So kind of validated that in testnet, but we want to make sure that we can validate in the mainnet, right? We know we build these tools, but we don't know unless we actually can see this tool in production with real money being exchanged, right? So 2021 is going to be a road to product market fit. And I think a tool like Akash demands an incredible amount of behavioral change and is not exactly the easiest to use for someone that doesn't have tokens. Once you have tokens, it's an amazing experience. But if you don't have tokens, it's still a little challenging to get these tokens because of regulatory concerns. It's not technology. So in 2021, our theme is going to be improving the developer experience. So we're going to be writing a few tools around making sure there's a frictionless way we can onboard people, right? And second thing is, instead of having a road, like when we talk about roadmaps, right? We normally tend to go very sequential, very linear. We have thinking roadmaps. Oh, we're going to do this first. We're going to do that first. We're going to do something else after, right? But my question is, how do you know what to do, right? What are these decisions based upon, right? So Akash, we plan to change that. Instead of, we truly want to have a roadmap where that's going to depend on market, right? So there are X amount of things we could do. One of the things that we plan on doing is GPU support, so that machine learning workloads can come into play. More persistent storage, so you can actually store for a longer term, and you don't get the you don't have to have long wait times for your data to sync every time there's a fault tolerant event, right? And more improvements around how providers handle their workloads, and more improvements around price stabilization, economics, right? And super many. We have like so many things that we could do in 2021, but what we're going to do is going to be hyper disciplined on selecting what to do based on the input we get from the community and from our usability, right? So it's very important to be adaptive instead of having a fixed roadmap, and have there's these amazing things you can do while being able to navigate and have market-driven decisions. And we're going to publish more formalized way of how we're thinking about this roadmap development, and we're going to need a lot of input from the community. Till 1.0, we believe that we need to ship a product which is essentially the functioning cloud. Till 1.0, it's a lot of the team. Effort comes from the team, but after 1.0, it's going to be community giving out the direction, because community is what ultimately decides whether a project is successful or not, right? So expect a lot more communal development from what has been primarily the team development till now. But a common theme across the board for 2021 is user experience. Doesn't matter what we do, we're going to improve user experience. We're going to make it better and better. And we have a very disciplined way of how we're going to approach this, right? Another thing we're going to be focused on is interoperability. With IBC going live, that opens up amazing opportunities for us to interoperate with other chains, right? So every time we look at developing a feature, we're not going to look at just from how we are going to develop, but we're going to first look at how we can use what's existing out there. We're only going to develop it if we cannot use what's out there. So interoperability and user experiences are going to be the common themes, and features-wise, we're going to be more market-driven.
That's great. Thank you, Greg. And just lastly, I think I've been getting a lot of feedback on Telegram and Twitter from people who are really excited about IBC and asking us, what does IBC mean to Akash? What does IBC mean to the Cosmos ecosystem? What does IBC mean to blockchain in general? Maybe you can just unpack lastly kind of some of the answers to those questions. I think people are really interested.
Right. So IBC, like today, the internet, right? So internet operates on a series of protocols, right? So you have TCP/IP, then you have HTTP, which runs on TCP/IP, right? And then you have Bluetooth, which can interact with your TCP/IP network using a different protocol. So you have essentially multiple protocols, right? Right now, I'm using a headset that's connected to my computer using Bluetooth, which is connected to the internet over TCP/IP, right? So this is like essentially how the internet works. And SMTP send an email, which is another protocol that has some HTTP interaction too, right? So internet has figured out how to interoperate, right? Blockchains haven't. So IBC is the first practical attempt at making an interoperable network of value, right? So, and what that means is scalability, right? So instead of building things yourself, right, why not look at other networks that you can leverage upon, like Solana does high performance smart contract. It'll be great for Akash to have Solana, have developers write the smart contracts in Solana and use Akash, right, for their hosting, and have that incorporated in a single atomic transaction, right? Or like DeFi applications, right? Like now, imagine you have all these incredible networks. You have Thorchain, you have Ethereum ecosystem where majority of the DeFi activities happens, and we are seeing quite a bit of activity in the Cosmos ecosystem from Kava, from Thorchain, and several others. And now I believe Sippy Chain. Several others, right? Imagine being able to work with all these protocols in a atomically composable manner, right? In a single transactions where you can actually atomically reverse the transaction if anything goes wrong in a deterministic manner. So that is possible using IBC. And immediate first few use case for Akash is just AMM, automatic market makers. Akash, as most of you know, is not an Ethereum token. It's on Cosmos, so that limits us from listing on Ethereum. But with IBC, that opens up a whole range of possibilities where we can list on an Ethereum-based exchange in a truly decentralized way. So right now, in order for us to go list on an Ethereum exchange, we have to only way centralized. There's a custodial service somewhere. It's like every other Cosmos chain that has a Ethereum pair has some backing, either through Binance backing it or some custodial backing it. There's no non-custodial way of interoperability. So IBC will be the first non-custodial way to interoperate between chains. So, and that's very, very important because that's a lot more secure and that's a lot more aligned with the principles of decentralization.
Great, thank you so much, Greg. That's awesome. I think a lot of the people here and a lot of our community at large would really like to hear that answer. So I look forward to sharing this live stream a little bit further down the road. So now we're just moving on to the final 5 minutes of our live stream. We've got some shout outs. Thanks to Bitmart. They included us in their year-end roundup of the top 10 cryptos of 2020. So thank you to Bitmart for the nomination. Also, shout out to Elio Trades. Elio has been shouting us out on YouTube. He's taken a liking to AKT. So we really appreciate all the support from him. It's been really impactful. Also, thank you to John of Leo Finance. He wrote a really great write-up sort of talking about his entry into AKT. He walked us through what the experience was like finding us, purchasing AKT, staking it, and how his investment's done so far. It's done well for him. So thank you to John for writing that. Maybe somebody can share that in the chat. It's actually a really great, candid account of the process of getting it all the way to staking it and so forth. So thank you to John for doing that. And also thank you to Cosmos. We had a really great AMA and Telegram with Greg in the Cosmos Telegram. So thank you to them for that. And we're also super honored to be on there, to be listed as a core developer on the Cosmos's new Stargate site. So we're one of 7 core developers. Greg, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we're still very honored and very fortunate to work with an amazing Cosmos ecosystem. As most of you, I don't know if you know, most of you don't. I'm not sure if most of you know this. Cosmos is a truly decentralized development ecosystem, right? So Cosmos team per se, I think most of the code developers are in Tendermint, but they're spread across Inclusion Inc., Informal Systems, Region Network, some of the Witwit guys here. They're all over. They're like 7 or 8 companies that actually are core contributors to Cosmos, and one of them for the Stargate is Akash. So we helped develop the Relayer, which is a side chain that connects 2 IBC projects, and we're very proud of the work. It is a bridge to the hub. And we will be the first chain to connect to the hub. That's also a great place for us to be. We're very deeply involved and in the Cosmos community, and they've been amazing towards us too. So it's probably the best community to be involved in. There are about 200 chains, right? Like you should go check out this new website called cosmos-cap.com, and it shows you all the amazing projects right now on Cosmos, and all the band protocol. I mean, I think it's just the intelligence and the level of like involvement and cognitive ability is just significantly higher in Cosmos ecosystem than any other system that we've interacted with. Yeah, Stargate 7, I call it.
Yeah, it's really exciting. Can't wait for it to launch later in February and for our mainnet too. So we just wanted to thank everybody. I just personally wanted to thank the community. Shout out to the community because you guys have been killing it. Whether it's a retweet or whether it's evangelizing us on Twitter or sharing us with your peers or with influencers or creating content. I mean, we've had so much content come from the community in the last 2 to 3 months. It's actually incredible. Like our Twitter grew 2,500 users this month. We grew 25% this month, and a lot of that has to do. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement with IBC and a lot of excitement with Akash in general, but a lot of that has to do with you guys. A lot of that has to do with you guys sharing us with your friends and with people, relevant people in the crypto industry. So I just want to thank everybody here in this chat, from myself and from the rest of the team, because you guys are really what we're doing this for. And without you guys, Akash wouldn't be where it's at. So I just want to thank you guys, all of you here, and whoever happens to not be here, to them as well. So now we're here for the prizes. So we're going to do a little prize drawing. Last time, like I said earlier in the chat, last time we'll be pulling the prize winners from our last stream. But in order to win for our next stream, you're going to need to subscribe to our YouTube channel and also have participated in the chat during this stream. So I'm now about to share my screen, and we're going to do a quick prize drawing. All right, guys, can you guys see? Do we see the wheel? The wheel of fortune, our own personal wheel of fortune. I love you, Akash. We love you too. Woohoo. All right, we're doing it. Lucky winner, this lucky winner is winning a Akash t-shirt. Let's go. Let's go. Ooh, Ilya. Lucky winner, Ilya. Okay. All right, number two.
Ilya again.
Oh, Kyle. We got Kyle.
Kyle, okay.
Okay. Kyle, you're winning a lucky Akash t-shirt. Number 3. Oh. All right, guys, and for the grand prize from our last stream, a Ledger Nano X. Let's see who wins number 4. Georgie P, congratulations. You just won a Ledger Nano X. Thanks for joining us during our last stream. So that's it for us, guys. Again, just wanted to thank you all so much for your support. 21 is going to be a big year. Maybe, Greg, you can share some final words.
I'm genuinely excited. Like, with everything that's happening with censorship and everything that's happening, around the conversation around decentralization, I think Akash is primed to take off, right? Like, I mean, there's no other possible solution. I mean, solving for censorship begins with solving for the foundational element, which is the cloud. So I'm super excited because we are there, we are ready. The timing has never been perfect, right? So I'm just excited to launch the mainnet 2 and see what comes out of it. And we're ready to go. Like, we have all the computer capacity. We have over 80 applications. We have like over 480 users on our testnet. and it's a lot of things to get excited about come mid-Feb. And next time, and I'll be on the live stream, I'll be talking to you hopefully on about Mainnet 2, and hopefully love to see some of the applications deployed from you guys. So if you want to come over to our Discord, it's discord.akash.network. If you have an application idea, love to talk to you. Find me on Discord or find me on Twitter, and we'll get you onboarded.
Great, and just final words. Really wanted to say thank you again to you guys for the support. Please find me on Telegram. Please find me on. You can message us on Twitter. We've been getting a lot of community support, and I'd love to leverage all of your creativity and your ideas and your energy to furthering the goal of getting Akash to as many people as possible. So if you guys have any great ideas or you want to be more involved in the community in any way, just reach out to me, please. And just echoing what Greg said, really excited for 21. And thanks for joining us, guys. That's it.
Thank you.
That's it. That's the end of the show.